Good morning. Good to see you guys. It's great to be back in Key Biscayne. We're here with a great announcement on a beautiful day. Traffic was what you'd expect, I guess, in Miami. We probably should have budgeted a little bit more for that, but it is what it is. We're joined here by our DEP Secretary, Sean Hamilton. We have the Vice Chairman for South Florida Water Management District, Scott Wagner. Cheryl Meads is also on our South Florida Water Management District Governing Board. Eric Eichenberg, Everglades Foundation CEO. Kelly Ralston from the Conservation and Public Policy for Bonefish and Tarpon Trust. Noah Valenstein, former DEP Secretary, now Chairman of the Biscayne Bay Commission. Adam Blaylock, DEP Deputy Secretary for Ecosystem Restoration and member, Biscayne Bay Commission. Of course, Senator Ileana Garcia. Senator, I guess Anna Maria is not here, but we do have our new senator, Senator Alexis Calatayud. So thank you. Congratulations. We've also got Representative Alex Rizzo. Is this was your second term now or third? Second, okay. And Basabi, the Republican Miami Beach, is now the representative right here. Not a lot of people were predicting that, although I knew he was going to win on Election Day because we follow these things and we kind of know what we're doing. But we've been really excited to see some great new people coming into the legislature now after this most recent election, and particularly down here in South Florida. I mean, you had some really great election victories, and so I know they're going to be able to do a lot and be able to produce a lot. And, if you do good work, the people respond. Ileana, what was your, you won by how many votes your first time?
34.
And then how many points percentage you just win by?
Over 20.
20. So, you go. That was the same with us. We went for, we did 33,000 and 18, did 1.5 million margin this time. I mean, it's just, you do it how you do it. So we're glad to be here at Biscayne Bay. This is a very important resource for the state of Florida. It's the largest estuary in our state. Of course, it has a direct connection to Florida's coral reef. And as many of you know here down in South Florida, it's an important economic driver for the region. We have the largest passenger port in the world. Of course, it's an international sailing destination. It's also been boats. As we got all this migration, people come down by boats they didn't necessarily know how to do. So you see a little bit of that. But bottom line is people want to be here. They understand how nice it is. But we've also seen over the years that it has a lot of unique challenges. And there have been a lot of efforts to recognize this and to help ameliorate problems as best that we could. And so this is something that when I became governor, we said we wanted to take head on. We wanted to make sure that we were doing all that we could to make sure that we were being good stewards of Biscayne Bay and doing what we need to do to improve the overall ecosystem here. Part of that was in 2020, we did a joint deal with the county, and we each did 10 million. So we pumped 20 million into Biscayne Bay efforts. And then in 2021, I signed House Bill 1177. So this was something that Senator Garcia had sponsored. And what it did was it established the Biscayne Bay Commission to bring federal, state, and regional partners together to focus on the health of Biscayne Bay. So this commission's met regularly over the last year to evaluate programs, identify priorities, and ensure adequate funding for the priorities. And so we've been able to do a lot already with Biscayne Bay, and then today here we're able to say we're going to do even more. So I'm building on our progress that we've made in Biscayne Bay today by announcing an additional 7 awards totaling $22.7 million through the Biscayne Bay Grant Program to support water quality and other protection projects. So since I've been governor, we've now done over $52 million once this award is disseminated for the health of Biscayne Bay. So the projects today, there's money that's going to go to the Village of Key Biscayne, Coral Gables, Miami Springs, North Miami, Miami-Dade County, Cutler Bay. And you're looking at things like septic to sewer conversions. You're looking at stormwater management. You're looking at additional wetland restoration. And so these awards are going to help the areas located around Biscayne Bay reduce the impacts. It's a very big, populous part of the state. And so there's just naturally things that you have to deal with. And of course, it seems to be a place that more and more people want to come to. So being able to do some of the things we're doing with this is going to have a lot of effects downstream, and it's going to make the Bay better. So we did over $30 million already since I've taken office to improve Biscayne Bay and water quality. Some of that is infrastructure like septic to sewer to reduce nutrient pollution and water, improve water quality, also increasing freshwater inflows to protect marine habitats in the Bay. We've used more innovative technology to improve stormwater management and help prevent sanitary sewer overflows, and I know we've seen that in the past. We've also done funding to protect coral reefs, and so we're happy that we've been able to get a lot of momentum. We're happy that we've been able to make a difference. We're going to continue to do that. Of course, this is part of larger efforts that we've done over my 4 years with Everglades restoration. We did $3.3 billion in my first 4 years. That was over doubling what was done in the previous 4 before I became governor. You now have more water flowing from Lake Okeechobee south through the Everglades and into Florida Bay than you've had in the modern Florida history, and we're doing more all the time. We also created the Resilient Florida program, and that was over $1.1 billion so far for projects to fortify our infrastructure and help communities better prepare for the impacts that Mother Nature may throw our way. I mean, you saw Hurricane Ian in Southwest Florida, and the thing that you noticed was you had Charlie in 2004, you had Irma in 2017. Some of the areas that went through that and had more resilient infrastructure, they fared much better. In fact, you look at a lot of the homes, and people down here know because after Andrew, you saw how the building codes changed. You know, some of those homes that were built since that time, you know, did pretty well. I mean, you know, maybe you'll have some roof shingles or something, but you didn't see the catastrophic results with that more fortified infrastructure, whether it's somebody's private home, whether it's some of the underlying infrastructure in terms of what goes on with the overall county or city. So this stuff does work, and it lets the communities get back on their feet. I mean, there's a lot of damage that was done, of course. I mean, you have 155 mile an hour winds coming ashore, you had major storm surge. Some of those buildings were very old, and they just were not up to specification to be able to handle that. And so, of course, you saw a lot of damage, but you also saw a lot of resilience. Even like these mobile homes and these manufactured homes, some of the newer ones that are built knowing that you could have a hurricane, there were actually some of those parks where the damage, I mean, I thought it would have been wiped off the whole planet, and yet the damage was relatively modest, and some of the places didn't get damaged at all. So this stuff matters. It also just matters that in Florida, we take a lot of this stuff seriously. If you think about with Ian, you know, we didn't know exactly where it was going to end up going, and was kind of a moving target. But you had 42,000 linemen and crewmen that were pre-stationed in the state of Florida to be able to respond to get the power back on. So you had millions of people that lost power, and you had the quickest restoration of any major hurricane because of the preparation. So you had that, you had our FDOT, you know, clearing the roads, making sure everyone could get back in. We had the urban search and rescue. You know, they were coming across Alligator Alley from South Florida to be able to go. It was still like tropical storm winds effectively, and they were in there in the wee hours of the morning on that Wednesday into Thursday morning, going in, and they did thousands of rescue missions, to be able to help people. And as you saw, that was important because you had two islands, Pine Island and Sanibel, the bridges got knocked out. So you wake up the next morning after that, the causeway going to Sanibel, Long Causeway, it was severed in 3 places. Pine Island was like almost totally washed away. You looked at that, you're like, oh my gosh. And so the people were being told, hey, this is going to take 6 months to a year. You better get off these islands. There's just not going to be able to be help. And even though these were not state roads or bridges, they reached out to us and we said, yeah, we'll help. So we went in there. We did the one bridge, took cognizance of it, produced a temporary bridge in 3 days going into Pine Island. And then on Sanibel, it was a total work of 2 weeks, which was the 3rd week after the storm, they were able to repair all 3 different locations. And so, I'm coming down here, flying over that, looking, seeing they would have still been severed from that, had we not done what we did. And so that is just the way where, you got to have all hands on deck on some of these things. And we were happy to be able to do that. And the result is because of that, because of the quick power, but because of some of the resiliency, for a storm of that magnitude, you're going to see the quickest bounce back, I think, that we've seen of a Category 4 plus storm. And so it makes a difference. It really matters. And we're happy to be able to continue leading the way on all these issues going forward. Okay, we have Sean Hamilton is our secretary for DEP, and then we'll hear from Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Governor. Honored to be here today again to celebrate the progress we continue to make for Biscayne Bay under your leadership and the investments that we're making to protect not just, the bay for today, but thinking about the future, right? Setting a firm foundation so that restoration can catch hold and be firmly planted into the future. So it's been a year, as the governor noted, since the Biscayne Bay Commission convened. And so along with our partners, they've been hard at work. They've developed a suite of efforts that will complement the projects that we're talking about to get today. But more importantly, it's about working collaboratively with partnerships to achieve a healthy future for our bay. So I want to acknowledge all of the hard work of the local folks here in the county, the cities and municipalities, and their efforts to work together to do just that. So our federal, state, and local stakeholders came together and compiled a list of over 165 ongoing projects outside of this. And again, that's important, right? Those are projects that are happening now as we speak. And that's that foundation that I speak of that'll set the future, set the stage for a healthy bay in the future. Miami-Dade County continues to work aggressively on a remedial action plan, a remedial assurance plan. The focus of that plan, if you think about it, that is a collaborative, self-administrated process by which the stakeholders here are working collaboratively to come up with a foundation by which they can invest in projects, they can identify solutions, and they themselves, along with our support, can set the path again for the recovery of the bay. Also want to acknowledge the work of the South Florida Water Management District. They are working feverishly hard to finish the Biscayne Bay Coastal Wetlands Project. Again, that is an important project when we think about restoring freshwater flows to Biscayne Bay, but also thinking about improving salinity of those nearshore areas. And so again, another great project that is being brought to bear by our Water Management District. Again, all made possible by the governor's leadership and setting the environment as his priority day one coming into office. Some of the projects like the governor mentioned today, they're going to convert portions of Miami septic systems. Again, as we know, that is a long-standing legacy problem. It is a large problem, but again, these investments will start to turn the needle on that, and we'll start to see those benefits as we reduce nutrients going into the bay. So, as the governor Biscayne noted, Biscayne Bay is a treasured resource, not just here in Miami-Dade, but as a state as a whole. It is a foundation that shows how important it is to make sure that we maintain that equilibrium between our built-out infrastructure and our environment that underpins our economy and our healthy ways of life. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but this is the foundation that it's going to take us to move that forward, and that would not be possible without the governor's leadership and again making the environment in this a priority. I look forward to working with the county, our elected officials, our other partners from the Biscayne Bay Commission, again as we collaborate on projects like this as we look to the future for Biscayne Bay. So again, Governor, thank you for your leadership.
Right.
And I would like to second everything that Secretary Hamilton has said. Thank you, Governor, so much for your full support on what was my commitment, originally coming in as Senator for District 37 and now for District 36. Our motivation is obviously driven by a genuine treasure, which is Biscayne Bay. We all love where we live, therefore we make this a priority. I'd like to give a very special thanks also to the local volunteer groups that go out on the weekends and make sure that we clean up what a lot of people in a very disconsiderate manner leave behind, which is a lot of the pollution that we see on the spoiled islands. That is another one of the efforts that we have ongoing. And I'd like to thank Secretary Hamilton as well, because it has been something that we have put on the radar, something that we are closely working with, along with the Chief Bay Officer for the county, Irela Bagay. Thank you so much, Irela. You've been so wonderful, in continuing the work and the efforts. But once again, singling out these volunteer groups, Clean Up Coastal Corp, also Miami Beach Cleanup, and other efforts that are constantly ongoing because they treasure this treasure that we call Biscayne Bay. Also, Louis Aguirre for always being able to point out in a proactive manner where it is that we're dropping the ball and what it is that we can do better. So once again, thank you so much, Governor, for your help, for your work, and for walking the talk. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't see Charlie. We have Charlie Martinez from the Water Management Board. So thanks for coming. Appreciate it. So we're happy to be able to do this. We look forward to making some more progress with our new legislature. We are going to be doing a special session in December. We're going to be doing tackling homeowners insurance reforms, which is needed, and we've done some, but we need to do more. We're going to be doing hurricane relief for the property owners who've had their properties destroyed. We're going to forgive those property taxes. We need the legislature to do that. I've delayed it, but I need them to do it, and we will do whatever we need to do to help the Hurricane Ian communities in terms of appropriations or some of the other things. And so I think that it'll be really, really good. We're also going to be pushing all the priorities that we outlined during the campaign. Now, there was more I wanted to outline, but we had the hurricane, we had a lot of other stuff. But, I promised that we wanted to do the 50% reduction in tolls for the commuters. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be working on getting that done as soon as possible because I know that when you have inflation the way it is, that's something that can make a big, big difference for a lot of people. So stay tuned on that, and hopefully we'll have some good news very, very shortly. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Governor, 2 questions, if you will indulge us. Reference the projects that you're now considering. Are those new projects with money already allocated?
Yep.
Money?
They are. It's the money. When is it going to be sent, or it is sent now?
We'll execute the agreements, but it is money that's currently in our budget.
Yep.
So these are new projects?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, number 2, the resiliency you're talking about, reference property insurance and the special session coming up. Have you worked with lawmakers at all to give them your priorities and how you want to see districts go? And how much of this is a long-term approach, like resiliency, like we not building in areas that are more vulnerable, that kind of thing? What's your vision?
Well, so I think that, there's a couple issues that we have. The way I view it is, okay, what is our property insurance situation? If you look nationwide, we have 8% of all claims the state of Florida represents, but we have 78% of all litigation expenses. So that's telling me that you have a lot of lawsuits, and there will literally be cases where a policyholder will get $50,000 award and the attorney will get $1 million. Okay? you are paying for all of that. I mean, that money doesn't just grow on trees. And so we've seen that, and we're one of only a few states in the country that allows that type of thing to happen. And so what I say is, okay, where are these other states? How are they doing things? You know, people have looked at Florida, how we're doing right on a lot of things and copying us there. Well, wait a minute. These other states have more stable insurance market. It's not just property, unfortunately, in Florida. There's others, and we will tackle that and do as well. But for this coming, why are they have more stable? It's one thing to say we have more perils, so marginally a premium will be higher here than some other part of the country. That's kind of, you know, you live on nice areas, but you recognize that. But it's the turbulence, and it's companies that got kicked out of the state, and then they try to come, and then we don't have the bet. So what are we doing different than these other states? And so I think we need reforms that are going to make our market look like markets that have been more stable and durable. The other thing that you have is, you know, any company that comes in, they do premiums and whatnot, but they also purchase reinsurance, which is a global market, and that has been tightened, and it's not necessarily Florida specific. So we did something in May, which really, I think you probably would have many more companies going out of business. We didn't, to create kind of an extra layer. You know, we have the cat fund, we have other things. So we're going to look to see, is there a way to do, they'd have to buy into it. I mean, we're not just going to give it away, but can we, since we have such massive budget reserves right now, could we provide a bridge on reinsurance as the rest of our market starts to get better? I mean, I think if we had a functioning market, there would actually be opportunities for companies to want to come in here, because, you know, you look at like a Miami, you know, these homes that are built, those condos and those, they can withstand a Category 5. I mean, like, no question they can do it. So the market, I think, would attract, but if they're going to go and someone has a $20,000 claim and the lawyer gets $400,000, that's going to be problematic. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why a lot of companies have said, you know, I don't know that I necessarily want to be in the state of Florida. At the end of the day, for a consumer, you have the, when you are the most empowered is when you can choose between, you know, a half a dozen companies and they have to compete for your business. If you don't have the ability to do that and you get dumped onto Citizens or something like that, well, then the consumer doesn't have really any power. And I would say, remind people about Citizens, because some people say everyone should just go on that. Citizens, if you had that, you had a massive storm, and it's not capitalized enough to pay all the premiums. In state law, it has mandatory assessments for all policies throughout the state, not just homeowners policies, renters insurance policies, automobile policies. So think about it. You could be renting an apartment in Coral Gables and a car that's insured. There's this massive hurricane that hits like the Panhandle. Citizens, if it went belly up, you could get hit with assessments based off that. So we need to have a functioning market, and so we're going to work to make sure that happens. Yes, sir.
Governor, thank you so much. It's good to see you again. I'm not going to ask you if you're running for president. You've probably heard that one a couple times already. You certainly have your pulse on national politics, and given the rumors that are swirling, I'm curious, what is your take on Mr. Trump being back in the news every day, and what is your take? You enjoy a healthy Republican Party in Florida, but nationally the Republican Party is divided. So can you elaborate for us on those two specific items, national Republican politics, and your take on Mr. Trump being in the news every day?
Well, look,
He's a resident, by the way.
we understand, but I also got 22 million others, and we got to look out for everybody. And so we're focusing on getting things done, doing our job, and that's what we're going to continue to do. I think the election, it was interesting. You know, we knew we were going to do well because we worked hard. You know, we delivered a good message. We had a lot of enthusiasm, and we saw it not just in places like Miami-Dade, which, you know, was historic, but a place like Palm Beach, which is even more historic. I mean, it's been almost 40 years since a Republican governor candidate has been able to carry that county. And so you see that. And of course, we had a lot of great people running in the legislature and the Senate, and those have been big majorities. And so we knew it. We saw it on even just the early vote came in. We were winning Dade, going away. And so they call the race. We see good stuff. It gets into 9 o'clock. You know, I give the speech and I go back afterwards, and some of my folks were like, Governor, this is not a red wave. I was like, what are you talking about? This is not a red wave. This is a 20-point. When have we ever seen it? No. Florida is a big win, but the rest of the country, we are not seeing really good performance from a lot of these Republicans. They're like, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to win the Senate. The House is going to be very close. You know, we assumed we were going to end up with like 245 House members. We're at 222, it looks like, which is a huge underperformance. And so, you know, the question is, you know, why did that happen? Because the way these midterms work, someone gets elected to the White House and then there's a reaction the other way. That's what happens almost every 2 years. And especially when people are pessimistic about the direction of the country, have a negative view on Biden, usually those voters are going to want to vote for people that are offering an alternative. And yet some of those voters throughout the country, not in Florida, but throughout the country, even though they disapproved of Biden, even though they disapproved of the direction of the country, they still didn't want to vote, for some of our candidates. So I don't think it's a question necessarily being divided as a party. I think it's like, okay, how do you run and win majorities? And I think what we've done in Florida is we've shown that we've exercised leadership. We've not kowtowed. We've been willing to take on big interests just look at the environment, what we did coming in. Look at what we've done with some of these other things, but producing results, and then that ends up attracting more people to want to be on your team. And so that was not something that was happening, throughout the rest of the country. But I think that we really showed, how it's done in the state of Florida. And if you look about, how we performed, no governor Republican has ever gotten a higher percentage of the vote in Florida history than we got in 2022. So. Yes, sir.
Same question, if I could.
Sure.
You talked about Sanibel and the causeway. You drove over a causeway today. Here in Key Biscayne, a lot of people are worried about the Bear Cup Bridge to be washed out by a strong Category 2 storm. What kind of action can the state do to shore up bridges like the Rickenbacker Causeway, the Bear Cup Bridge, systems like that would be vulnerable in these massive storms?
Well, if you think about it, first of all, they're always doing those assessments. I mean, when the hurricanes came, they're immediately out there inspecting every bridge. Like, the bridges don't get opened unless they're inspected. So that's something that they're constantly doing. I would say on the Ian, those were not state bridges, and so those were things that the county had done. That was partially a perfect storm. I mean, you had almost a Category 5, and that was basically, those bridges were almost right at impact. So that is something that I think you didn't necessarily want to see that. But I would say this on those: part of the reason we were able to get them up and running so quickly is the most important structures of those bridges actually held. There were other parts that washed out, but the most significant ones, the big pylons in the water, held. And so I think that's something, that's important. So our folks always want to make sure our stuff's good. Now, we lost a bridge in Sally in 2 years ago, but it wasn't necessarily because of the direct impact of the storm. What happened was, you had the storm. It totally would have been able to have been fine with that, but you had someone left a barge that wasn't tied down. So this barge starts going, and the barge rams in to the bridge, and that created damage that was more severe than what a hurricane would have been able to do. So that was a longer restoration effort. But yeah, these are important things.
Every day we see more and more voters in social media, videos of voters touching our day. What do we be doing in order to have more enforcement?
I'm sorry, doing what?
Trash.
Okay.
Trash in our day. Voters throwing their trash in our day, and we see it in social media. How can we enforce law to prevent that?
Do you want to, when you guys want to take,
I'll be glad to. And so I think that's a two-part answer, right? The local presence is important here. You hear the senator talk about the partnerships, the awareness. You see something, inform the officials, identify the problem areas, because some are a lot more intense on their activities than others. and then formulate solutions to attack those areas. Part two of that is FWC is an important partner when you think about our waterways, and so making sure they're aware of those areas, making sure they're engaged, making sure they understand that there's a need to maybe a focused presence. So there are options out there. It's just a matter of creating that consensus on how to approach it. So,
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. So good to see you all. Thank you.
Just another absolutely fantastic press conference from the governor. I know I have given him a lot of grief over the whole Dave Rubin thing. So I just wanted to, take a moment and show that he still is doing a lot of very good things for the state of Florida. Those of you who are unaware of where Key Biscayne is, let me zoom out the map here real quick. Get the camera adjusted. It is off the coast of, here's Miami. Here's Homestead. Key Biscayne's right here. It's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful area of Florida. Somebody in the comments had mentioned that South Americans own some property down there. That's fine. I mean, we don't sit and discriminate. We don't have a litmus test for those who want to come to Florida. Pardon me. Don't drink bubbly water while you're talking on live. My advice. Don't do that. Anyway, southeast of Miami. It's a beautiful area, and like I said, if you're South American and you want to have Floridian values and you want to come here, absolutely not a problem whatsoever. However, I did want to cover this today because it goes right along with something that I really get a lot of pushback about. There's a couple things that trolls love to take issue with the governor. The first one is with Florida. They want constitutional carry, constitutional carry. That's absolutely the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life. Constitutional carry. The Second Amendment reads very clearly, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free, you could say free republic if you wanted to. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed by the federal government. Now, you see, and that's the key. The whole point of the Second Amendment was by the federal government. It was a list of something the federal government shouldn't do. Now, at the state level, down here at the Florida level, okay, we want not only our people to be trained and be a part of a militia and have the understanding that their role is not self-serving as a member of the militia, it is serving the Republic of Florida. It's not a self-serving thing. Concealed carry keeps everybody from knowing, all the evildoers from knowing who is and who isn't armed. Can you imagine in the military? Those of you guys in the military, and I use Star Trek a lot. Can you imagine having cloaking devices? You remember the whole thing with the Romulans having cloaking devices, and then they had the Star Trek ship, the Defiant, that had the secret cloaking device. If you could literally make yourself invisible, and your enemy would not know where you are, that's the key to concealed carry. And you really have to be a complete and total retarded F-up in Florida to not be able to get a concealed carry license. It's not that hard. It really is not that difficult. It takes some time to go gather the documents and put everything together and go down and do what you got to do to make it happen. It's not a complicated procedure whatsoever. It's a little bit time consuming. But once you have it, it's a second state issued Florida ID, picture ID. So, it's also something it's kind of a backup. So, that's thing number one that the trolls love to talk about. Number two is they love to whine and cry and piss and moan about voting machines. We have Dominion voting machines in Florida. We have dominion. It's people. And voting matters. And the governor covered this. He did. Even in some of the areas that you would say, well, Florida Maquis, you can't, it doesn't matter. I mean, in the really blue Democrat areas, they control everything. And explain how we flipped Miami Beach. Explain how we flipped so many other blue areas. Miami-Dade. You see, when you get together and you get organized, the governor, a lot of people say, well, the governor did this, that, and the other. The governor got elected without him having the ability to do anything. The governor wasn't a sitting governor when he got elected, when he ran against Gillum. He wasn't a sitting, we had no control. So even with the Democrat machine in place, DeSantis still won. How did that happen? How did that happen? It was only after DeSantis took power that he got rid of some election supervisors down in the Southeast, accepted their resignations. But to back this up, this is what today's video was going to be about, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do a live on this. DeSantis-backed school boards begin ousting Florida educators. Now, if this doesn't get you out of your seat and yelling at the screen that you're looking at right now, nothing else will. New board members in 2 GOP-leaning counties essentially sacked their school superintendents over the span of 1 week. Wait till you hear this, guys. Wait till you hear this. Conservative school board candidates are in office. School board candidates are in office and are purging some educational leaders who enforced COVID-19 mandates. 30 November 2022. Voting matters. That's what this is all about. Voting matters. Tallahassee, Florida. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis put his weight behind dozens of conservative school board candidates across Florida during the midterms. Now they're in office and are purging some educational leaders who enforced COVID-19 mandates. New board members in 2 GOP-leaning counties essentially sacked their school superintendents over the span of a week. The ousters were spurred by how the superintendents carried out local policies like efforts to support the rights of parents and an issue inflamed by schools imposing student mask mandates last fall in defiance of DeSantis. And while not tied to the 2022 election, the school board in Broward County earlier this month fired its superintendent through an effort led by 5 members appointed by DeSantis. All combined, school boards with ties to DeSantis pushed out 3 superintendents in November alone. And each of them served over districts that implemented student mask mandates. Voting in school board elections matters. 3 superintendents that decided to ally themselves with Biden are gone. They're toast. We had a wave in school districts that spit in parents' faces, said State Representative Randy Fine, Republican Palm Bay, who earlier this year sought to punish schools with mask mandates. And now the people who did that are gone. And now the people who did that are gone. In Brevard and Sarasota, largely blue counties, embattled school leaders have faced immediate pressure from newly installed board members and offered to leave voluntarily rather than risk a vote on their terminations, meaning they're cowards. You see, now that there's a fight, they run. The boards in both counties now have conservative majorities who sought a change in leadership immediately after the midterms. Although school boards are nonpartisan posts, technically, lines between Democrat and Republican candidates were drawn in many counties through endorsements from each party as well as outside groups. The newly elected board members in these cases support parental rights while opposing critical race theory and teaching gender orientation in schools. DeSantis in particular used his clout to endorse more than 24 school board candidates during the 2022 election cycle, a rare move for a Florida governor that came with $1,000 cash contributions from DeSantis and other GOP lawmakers. Most of the candidates DeSantis endorsed won their elections and are now transforming the makeup of school district leadership and will have huge influence over policies affecting hundreds of thousands of students, read future voters, Read future voters in the state. Both Sarasota and Brevard school boards put the superintendents on the chopping block the same day that new members endorsed by DeSantis and conservative organizations like Moms for Liberty were sworn into office. See, Moms for Liberty mattered. And these are little, tiny, itty-bitty elections that you would have to really do a super thorough Google search to even find the results of. But this is the key. This is the key in Florida. Remember how many times I've talked about old people and civics, God's waiting room, and all these old folks and the key parties and all this kind of stuff? These people understand what liberty is and what freedom is and how civics matters and I'm sorry, gunner guys, and how it makes sense that if you're going to have a freaking militia, to have them trained and have them concealed carry so that the bad guys don't know who the trained militia guys are. So this ridiculousness about constitutional carry, I don't want to hear anything about it. The Constitution is meant to keep the federal government out of our business. The Constitution. Okay, we have open carry in Michigan. That's right, G. Ferraro. And let's go take a look at who runs Michigan. A bunch of liberal, left-leaning, mask-loving, tyrannical Democrats run Michigan. That's a great example. We have open carry in Michigan, and you're one of the most tyranny-run states literally in the country right now. In fact, in the last election, Michigan went even farther left. While Florida has pretty much one-party rule for constitutional conservatives, you have nothing but Democrats and globalist liberals running your state. So I don't want to hear it about open carry. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Open carry. Like what is a Wild Wild West? Like it's the like that ever stopped a bad guy. See, the bad guy's just not gonna know. Michigan's one of the most crime-riddled states in the whole country. It's got what, 4 million people? No, wait, but Michigan has, I believe, what, 10 million people? 10 million people and falling, if I remember right, in Michigan. That doesn't sound right. That sounds... You see, and this is the thing. Yeah, but who really voted for Whitmer? All the liberals. Ferraro. All the liberals. There's a ton of liberals in Michigan. The place is entirely run basically by Chicago. Chicago and Detroit run Michigan. Well, it's the R&D paradigm, Monica, and I'm just answering questions here. It's the R&D paradigm in the sense that it's conservative view of the world and a more progressive view of the world. So yeah, I mean, just like up in Georgia, there's this one huge city, Atlanta, that's skewing things, and just like in Michigan, there's this one huge city, Detroit, that's controlling everything. So Michigan, other than Detroit and maybe Lansing, is so spartanly populated that and up here on the and I say this knowing because I grew up here. I didn't grow up in Florida. My mother was born here. Most of my family's down here, but I grew up in northern Indiana. I just want to be very clear. So I know a little bit about Michigan. This coast right here, I believe they call it the Gold Coast. It's the southeastern shore of Lake Michigan. Michigan, just north of Michigan City, where the dunes are, all this area, are all a bunch of rich liberals that get all of their money out of Chicago. So this is all rich liberals. Kalamazoo, Battle Creek, this area is a little bit more conservative, but Lansing's a bunch of liberals, Detroit's a bunch of liberals. So yeah, it's you got Notre Dame that runs. You got the Catholic liberals that run Notre Dame in South Bend. So the woke mob. So down here in the deep South, it's one of the reasons I never go home. or home to the Senate. I mean, this is home for me now. I mean, where I was born was up in Indiana, but I never go back. Never. For me, honestly, right now, too far north is the Florida state line. I mean, just truth. But this is why I wanted to do this video today, to show you that it matters. Sarasota board members called Superintendent Brennan Asplin's job into question in the meeting Tuesday night, especially called to discuss his contract after fielding about 4 hours of public comment, mostly in support of the superintendent. Board members vented criticism over student performance, lack of transparency, understanding he may not have a job much longer. Asplin offered up his resignation on Monday night, the day before the board met to weigh his ouster, but the superintendent also fought at the meeting to keep his job by attempting to punch holes in critique. You see, he just doesn't get it. They just don't get it. That they work for the people. And it doesn't matter. You see, this idea of right and wrong. I'm very concerned, quote, said Ziegler, who was endorsed by DeSantis and co-founded Moms for Liberty. I don't know how respectfully we build a relationship where we are functioning together for the right reasons with mutual respect. Exactly. It doesn't matter whether anyone believes or doesn't believe something is or isn't right. You see, this is what the left tried and failed to do so badly. They wanted to try to establish what facts were. Sorry, just reading some comments here. So that there could be a unanimous opinion of what right and wrong is. This is what they were trying to do. And what they realize is that the country has two very different views of what right and wrong is. And what facts are. You see, we have a whole different set of facts down here in Florida that we operate from. And they have a completely different set of facts in Michigan and in Pennsylvania and in California. And they can operate from those set of facts and then go forward. But nobody can be the arbiter, especially the media. The media can't be the arbiter of this. It's up to the people down at the local level. You see, and that I know a lot of people I can't imagine it making that big of a difference. You know, they want to go every 4 years and they want to vote for president, and they think that's going to make a difference, as if Trump was ever going to make a difference. Trump himself doesn't even know who he's been over his whole lifetime. And I love how the governor, and you can go back, and when this video posts, this live event posts as a video, you can go back and look at how he answered the question about Trump. He basically said Trump is one of 22 million residents of the state of Florida. And the governor's too busy to worry about where he is or where he isn't on social media and what he believes is going to happen in a couple of years or not. It's not even on his radar. But the idea that DeSantis voters in Florida had a huge red wave, a massive, never before seen red wave, and the rest of the country, the red wave backed by Trump, fizzled and died. I think that's proof. That is proof positive that people no longer buy the guy's line of bullshit. And, I mean, tell me I'm wrong. Convince me I'm wrong on this. I mean, he really did. Mike DeWine in Ohio won his race by, I think, the governor. I mean, ridiculous amount of percentage points, 30 points. So the guy that was running for the Senate seat in Ohio, it was already a red district. It was already Southern Ohio. Trump didn't win Southern Ohio for the conservative movement. Trump didn't do that. And everywhere else he tried to influence things, I think he actually made things worse. I'll be honest with you, I think he made things worse because I think people remember. I think people truly remember that in 2020, he was the guy in charge for that pretty much whole year. And that's when things were the worst. The worst of the lockdowns, the worst of the government trespass, the worst of the tyranny was all under Trump. And the only person standing up against it in any real way was Governor DeSantis. You could make the argument that DC could have made the argument that Florida is a matter of national security. Some people have said, well, what about North Dakota? North Dakota is not a matter of national security. Florida is a matter of national security. We have Southcom, we have SOCOM, we have by far the most military on the entire East Coast. If you were going to, in fact, even when Putin made his little graphic of his, magical torpedo missile that can go around the globe and all this, the first place he would hit and get rid of would be Florida. And that would make sense. Honestly, from a strategic military standpoint, the very first place you would hit on the East Coast would be Florida. Just because the list is endless. Eglin, Homestead, NASJAX, there's so many different military assets down here. So they could have made the allegation in 2020 that, they needed to exercise federal power and federal authority to override whatever decisions the governor was making, but they didn't. Because they knew they couldn't. And believe it or not, even Biden said it. He even said it. The mainstream media covered it up, but he even said it. He's like, look, I am constitutionally constrained. Tyndall, Eglin, Pensacola. This goes on and on and on and on. Constitutionally constrained to the amount of things that I can do, to override a sitting governor. And this is, I think, the big, big misconception that's been taught to a lot of liberals, is they think that the president of the United States is the guy in charge, and all the governors are just basically little assistant presidents. Truly, that's what they believe, because most of them don't even know who their governor is. And most of them are too young to remember the issue with the integration of the schools in Alabama. How many of you out there are old enough to remember that? When they were trying to forcibly use the military to integrate schools in Alabama. That was a big deal, because you had state troops, you had state-ordered troops guarding a school, and federal troops came in, and you literally had Washington, D.C. troops, ordered troops, face-to-face with U.S. National Guard troops in Alabama over the integration of schools. And I don't relish the thought of it, but I could see, there was kind of an allusion to it in Sweet Home Alabama. In Birmingham, they love the governor, and we all did what we could do. Watergate don't bother me. Does your conscience bother you? Sweet Home Alabama. It's a lot of people I don't think get the reference, but Alabama finally, they relented over it, but I could foresee a day. I could truly foresee a day when this happens in Florida. We're going to have to see who takes power after Biden. I truly don't think that Governor DeSantis, because of his understanding of the Constitution, and you would have to have read his book to understand this, he has a very clear understanding of the roles of a governor, the roles of a senator, the roles of the president, that he has any designs on Washington, D.C. Because he realizes that he's, even in his power as governor, he's limited to a certain extent by the will of the people. And the only reason he has the power that he has, that Governor DeSantis has this power, is because of the House of Representatives in the state of Florida, the state Senate, our courts. That's what gives him his power and his authority, are these bodies that are elected by the people. He can't force through anything. And so, as the president of the United States, he couldn't magically wave a magic wand and fix Michigan. He couldn't fix Pennsylvania. He couldn't just say, I now declare all voting machines to be compromised and we're going to do hand-counted ballots. He couldn't do that. He couldn't do that. As he understands there's a limit to authority. Now, if the people of this country would create a 306 to 129 majority conservative status in Washington, D.C. in the House of Representatives, then they could do a lot. And that's the equivalent to what we have in Florida. We have a 85 to 35 majority. If you took that out and used that same percentage on the national level, it would be the equivalent of the House of Representatives being 306 seats conservative, 129 liberal. And even in the best case scenario, if there had been a red wave, to give you an idea of what they were hoping for, the conservatives were hoping for 240 seats. That gives you an idea of how lopsided it is now. And there's articles out there, we covered it, I think, about a couple weeks ago, that where the liberals have even said they have no designs in the next 10 years of ever having any kind of power in Florida ever again. They realize how there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do now that people have spoken, and that's why they really try to not even talk about DeSantis anymore, because they can't win. They can't win. They have no traction. I mean, we truly do have the king's peace in Florida. It's a settled thing. There's no arguments anymore. There are groups, small groups in Orlando and in Gainesville, in Tallahassee, and in and around Miami that don't like the way things are, but it's such a small group of people. It's such a small group of people now that politically they are irrelevant. And they know that if they get pushy, or if they get mouthy, or if they start to become a problem, that conservatives have enough power and enough money and enough moxie that we could probably take them out if we wanted to. That's why Disney is now hat in hand. Did you see what happened, Disney? They fired the guy. They fired the guy because they realized, oh crap, we need somebody new to deal with Ron DeSantis. We need somebody a lot more middle of the road to deal with Ron DeSantis. They're done. They are done. They thought for sure that they could use their power and their influence and their money, and they got clobbered. They got absolutely clobbered. So now Disney is now coming hat in hand to Tallahassee before the king, so to speak, with a very different attitude, a very much more deferent attitude to how we want things done. And I heard so many conservatives, and they're so silent now. You don't hear from them anymore. That we're so, well, you just wait. They're going to do this to DeSantis, they're going to do that to DeSantis, they're going to... You could tell these people had no idea how civics work. They have no idea how civics work. And it's really about, and Shauna, honest to God, It is really about the old folks. It truly is. There's a video I have wanted to do, and I don't know how to really do it on this channel without causing a whole bunch of problems. But there's a very strange dynamic that is happening now between men and women that I've noticed, and I have a friend in California that has noticed it as well. And it seems almost unbelievable if I had, told anyone 10 years ago about this. I've made these videos talking about what goes on with these little parties in the villages. And people are like, oh, but what about the VD this, VD that, VD the other, all the people that go swap keys with each other. And you have to remember something, most of these people are in their 60s and 70s and 80s. And so most of them don't have VD. They're not out partying, and just sleeping with whoever, whenever. It's a bunch of old folks doing this. But there's something else going on with it, and that's kind of a weird thing. What's happening now is because of the amount of, I should say the disparity between the amount of women and the amount of men down there. You'll have one woman who has 2 or 3 boyfriends, and all of the guys are monogamous to her. But she's basically still single and she can do whatever she wants. It's a very, very odd, and it works out fantastically. It's something now that you're actually seeing the new Gen Zers are adopting this model. That all of the guys know each other. Sometimes they all have kids and all of the kids know each other. And is that what it's called? It's Shauna, where it's one woman and she's got 2 or 3 boyfriends or whatever. They all know about each other. It's all cool. Everything's on the up and up. It wasn't like that in high school for me. I never knew of any girls that had 2 or 3 or 4 boyfriends that all knew about each other. In fact, it was very, very different in the 80s. In fact, I think it was more the other way around. So it's just very, very odd, but it's a very liberty-oriented thing. Okay, so I guess it's called polyandry. But it's a very liberty-oriented thing in Orlando that guys are kind of being a little less territorial, I guess, for lack of whatever, reason. They've lost this idea that they need to own or need to capture or lay claim to or whatever. Well, I guess it doesn't apply to everybody in the villages, but it's an interesting group of people that is very, very, very conservative, but they have some very strange things going on in and around this region. Florida affects people. I don't know what it is. When you look at what's happening in the country versus what's happening in Florida, I think historians are going to look back at this. Historians are going to look back and say, how did one part of this country go way over in this direction, and then the rest of the country go way over in this other direction, when this one little state was where everybody retired? How is it that everybody, when they're in their younger years, thought one thing, but then when they got much, much older, thought something completely different? And if there was ever a place the founding fathers if they could somehow jump into a time machine that they would feel comfortable living, I think it would be here. I don't think they would understand a lot of the rest of the country and what they're doing and why they're doing it. There is living Living in the TV, does that mean the villages? Aberrations in any community, I guess. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and maybe it's just anecdotal to some things that I've been hearing from different people. I don't want to break away anyone's privacy, but there's a story. I guess this isn't privacy. Go to look up the story about Kate Hudson, the actress. Kate Hudson has 3. Let's see. I want to get this right. Ex-husband, ex-fiance, current fiance, 1 child by each, and apparently everybody is all super happy. And everybody's kids knows everybody, and it's very modern family, and it works out perfectly. And I guess I don't hear any stories of this one guy has 3 ex-girlfriends and then kids by 3 ex-girlfriends, and then all of the girlfriends get along and it just does. I don't hear about stuff like that. I don't think most modern women want anything to do with the exes of, the guys they're with. So maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's, the algorithm is, messing with what I see on my computer and on my phone. Could very well be. I don't want to project anything if it's something that's more AI driven than reality driven. So anyway, I will leave it there, but just wanted to do a live. We haven't done a live in a long time. Thank you, Shauna, for the $10. Very much appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you for everyone who's joining us over at Patreon. Maybe that's a topic for over at Patreon. Maybe I should take that polyandry topic and throw it out over at Patreon and see what that audience has to say about it. So anyway, I will leave it there. God bless everyone. Have a great week. Rest of it, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.